Well, during a candid interview, Prince Harry revealed he stepped down from royal duties because the British press was toxic and destroying his mental health. Joining me live now is Professor Toby Miller from Murdoch University. Toby, thank you so much for your time today. Last week, Prince Harry and Meghan made a final split with the royal family, Buckingham Palace, confirming they would not be returning as working members of the royal family and they would lose their patronages. Prince Harry has said that he didn't want to walk away from his royal duties in this new interview, but he had to. What do you make of this?
Well, it's certainly another one of those crisis times for this family, is it not? So we have, Charles not particularly popular as the presumptive incoming monarch. We have his father in hospital. And in terms of Harry and Meghan, it seems as though, on the one hand, they've decided that they want to live in the United States. But on the other hand, the royal family, or the firm as it's sometimes known, wants to say that, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. We're going to take you off the royal list in terms of the money you receive and the various titles that are given to you in terms of, for example, being patrons of rugby or patrons of part of the military. It's a very difficult time for them. It's also interesting in that it's a critical time for parts of the British media. I mean, the two papers he's really referring to being the Daily Mirror and the Sun, which are the principal tabloids here and which have focused on the private lives of both parties.
Toby, this interview that we saw, it is pretty light-hearted. There are a few trivial things we found out in it. Tell us some of the finer details.
Well, it was interesting in that, for one thing, Harry revealed that he's quite a fan of the television series The Crown, which has been quite controversial here in Britain and in other places. Some Tory party ministers have said that it should carry a health warning, lest it give a wrong impression of the royal family. He was also rather taken aback at James Corden inviting him onto a double-decker, having said, we royals don't carry change, which certainly shows he's not used to mass transit in Britain because you can't pay for it with money. You've got to use cards. And, of course, he also referred in a more serious vein to mental health issues. But we know the great value that was shown by both Harry and his brother revealing the mental health issues that they suffered following the death of their mother and realizing the kind of hounding that she had gone through from the very media that he is now complaining about. So it was a nice mixture, I think, of humanizing him, which is important for the great British public, but also indicating that he had what he regarded, at any rate, as a very, very serious point to make about the need for media reform.
Yeah, I thought it was a good interview as well, particularly the fact that he liked the royals. I'm a big fan of The Crown, I'm a big fan of the series as well. Some have criticised Prince Harry and Meghan for doing this interview with Oprah. It's been talked about a lot over the past week. Instead of going back to England and seeing Prince Philip, are we expecting big things from this interview?
Well, as you know, Oprah is kind of the mother confessor of the United States, somebody who has immense trust put in her by the public, and not just the United States. Of course, she's had popular programs in many, many parts of the world. So I think it's a good opportunity for them to push their brand to a certain extent. After all, they are also trying to make money, which is something that they need to do, both for themselves and their children, but also in terms of their desire to provide public service and to be patrons of their own. But also, of course, it would be seen as ironic that people who are such critics of media sensationalization of their private lives would go to Oprah rather than, in this case, visit a probably very ill grandfather and see the family. However, this is also not a good time to travel. And of course, they're probably needing to bear that in mind in terms of both the health situation in LA and here in London.
Toby, do we know anything? Do we have any form of an update on Prince Philip's condition?
So it seems as though he will be staying a few more days in hospital. Really, the only news that I've seen is that he has an infection. This hasn't been described in any detail. There's no indication that it may be related to the current pandemic, COVID-19. Remember, he is a man well into his 90s. It's not expected that his body will be working at its fittest. And so any kind of infection is, of course, a great worry. But he's been visited by his children, and Prince Edward has said that he is, in inverted commas, doing better.
Well, it's a very hard situation for Prince Harry being over in the United States and having this pandemic. I'm sure he would much prefer to be by Prince Philip's side. Toby, thank you so much for your time and your insight today.
Pleasure.